"Do not tear that seal," Marcus Reed said, his voice so calm that Officer Daniel Whitmore mistook it for fear. The station lobby had gone strangely quiet, as if every ringing phone, every humming light, and every tired conversation had paused to listen. Marcus stood beside the front desk with his hands secured behind him, his dark overcoat still shining with rain from the cold streets outside. Whitmore held the thick envelope between two fingers, studying the red federal seal with a smirk that had already decided the truth before asking a single question. "You expect me to believe this belongs to you?" he said. Marcus lifted his eyes toward the clock above the duty board. 11:47 p.m. The name on the delivery order is Captain Richard Cole. Call the number printed beneath the seal. They will verify everything. Whitmore laughed softly. It was not a laugh born from uncertainty. It was the comfortable sound of a man who believed his badge made questions unnecessary. Around them, 3 officers watched without speaking. A desk clerk lowered her gaze toward a stack of forms. Sergeant Thomas Hale stood near the hallway, his expression tightening when he noticed the small eagle stamped into the wax. He recognized it. Marcus saw that recognition flash across his face, then disappear behind hesitation. "Officer," Hale began, "we should probably confirm. I know how to handle a forged document." Whitmore interrupted. Marcus turned his attention back to him. There was no anger in his face, only a steady patience that somehow made Whitmore more irritated. "This is your last chance to follow the instructions," Marcus said. "That is not a threat. It is a warning meant to protect everyone in this building." Whitmore stepped closer. "Men like you walk in here every week with some story about lawyers, judges, federal friends. You think an official-looking envelope changes who you are?" The words settled over the lobby heavier than the rain outside. Marcus did not lower his head. He did not raise his voice. Instead, he looked once more at the clock. 11:48. Somewhere beneath his sleeve, the face of his old wristwatch glowed faintly as a silent countdown continued. 9 minutes remained before a missed check-in would trigger a response Whitmore could not imagine. "Open the logbook," Marcus said. "My arrival was scheduled." Whitmore's jaw tightened. He slid one finger beneath the envelope flap. Hale took a step forward. "Dan, stop. That seal looks legitimate." For one brief second, Whitmore hesitated. He could have placed the envelope on the counter. He could have made one phone call. He could have allowed the truth to enter the room quietly. Instead, he looked at Marcus, saw only a black man standing where he believed authority did not belong, and pulled the sealed paper apart. The sound was small, almost harmless, just a sharp tear cutting through the fluorescent hum. Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. Then every light in the station changed from white to deep red. The front doors locked with a heavy metallic click. Computer screens went dark one after another. A woman's voice broke through every radio in the building, controlled and unmistakably federal. "All personnel remain where you are. This facility is now under United States Marshals service lockdown." Whitmore stared at the torn envelope in his hands. Marcus opened his eyes and looked directly at him. "You should have made the call." 47 minutes earlier, Marcus Reed stood beneath the narrow awning of a closed pharmacy while rain swept across Westbridge in silver sheets. The downtown streets were nearly empty, their storefront windows dark and their traffic lights changing for cars that never came. Water gathered along the curb and rushed toward a storm drain, carrying leaves, paper cups, and the ordinary evidence of a city already asleep. Marcus held the sealed envelope beneath his coat, protecting it from the weather with the same care he had shown since leaving the federal courthouse. To anyone passing by, he looked like a tired man waiting for the rain to ease. That was exactly how he wanted to look. His charcoal coat was plain, his shoes were worn at the edges, and the only object that seemed personal was the old wristwatch fastened around his left arm. The watch had belonged to his father, Isaiah Reed, who had spent 32 years teaching history at a public high school and reminding his son that truth did not become less true simply because powerful people refused to hear it. Marcus checked the time. 11 o'clock. He stepped away from the awning and walked the final 3 blocks toward the Westbridge police station. Each footstep splashed softly against the pavement. The building appeared through the rain like a block of pale concrete, its windows glowing beneath a weathered blue sign. Marcus stopped across the street and studied it for several seconds. He had been inside once before, nearly 14 years earlier, when he had come to ask about a friend who never made it home after a traffic stop. Back then, the desk officer had made him wait for 2 hours before claiming there was no record. There had been a record. Marcus had found it years later, hidden beneath an altered case number in the city archive. That discovery had started everything. He reached into his coat and removed a simple cell phone. The call connected after one ring. "I am outside," he said. A woman answered in a measured voice. "Confirm the delivery point. Westbridge Police Station. Direct transfer to Captain Richard Cole. And if Captain Cole is unavailable, I request the night's supervisor and give no one permission to open the envelope." There was a brief silence. "Your next check-in is at 11:57. If you miss it, the protection protocol begins automatically." Marcus looked at the station entrance. "Understood. You can still turn around." His expression softened, but his answer did not change. Too many people never had that choice. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The sealed order beneath his coat contained more than names. It contained dates, altered reports, missing recordings, and a trail of evidence connecting senior officers to years of concealed misconduct. Marcus was not carrying authority in the way Daniel Whitmore understood authority. He had no uniform, no marked vehicle, and no polished badge displayed at his waist. He carried something quieter and far more dangerous to men who depended on silence. He carried proof. As Marcus crossed the street, a patrol car turned into the rear lot. Its headlights passed over him, paused for a moment, then moved on. He climbed the station steps and placed one hand on the glass door. Inside, Officer Whitmore looked up from the front desk and watched him enter. Before Marcus spoke a word, the officer's face had already changed. Suspicion came first. Judgment followed. Marcus felt the envelope beneath his coat and remembered his father's voice. Truth does not need permission to enter the room. The glass door closed behind Marcus with a soft hydraulic sigh, sealing out the rain and replacing it with the dry hum of fluorescent lights. The lobby smelled of wet wool, old coffee, and floor cleaner. A television mounted in one corner played a muted weather report, while a printer clicked behind the front desk. Officer Daniel Whitmore sat beneath the station clock, one hand resting beside an unfinished report. He looked at Marcus for a moment too long, not with curiosity, but with the practiced suspicion of a man who believed he could identify trouble before it spoke. "Can I help you?" Whitmore asked, although his tone suggested he had already decided the answer was no. Marcus removed his rain-darkened coat, but kept the sealed envelope protected beneath his arm. "I am here to deliver a court order directly to Captain Richard Cole." Whitmore leaned back in his chair. "At this hour?" The delivery was scheduled. "By who?" "The issuing office is listed on the seal." Marcus placed his driver license on the counter and kept both hands visible. Whitmore glanced at the card, then at Marcus, then back at the card as if the ordinary information had somehow confirmed a private suspicion. "Marcus Reed," he read aloud. "What kind of business do you have with the captain?" "Confidential business." The instructions required direct transfer. Across the lobby, a young black man sat beside an older woman on a row of plastic chairs. He had been waiting for news about his brother, who had been taken into custody earlier that evening. When Whitmore's voice sharpened, the young man looked up. The expression on his face was not surprise. It was recognition. Marcus noticed it immediately. He had seen that look in city offices, court corridors, and waiting rooms where people learned that remaining calm did not guarantee they would be treated fairly. Whitmore held out his hand. "Give me the envelope." "I cannot do that." The room changed by a degree. Nothing dramatic happened. No one moved quickly. Yet the desk clerk stopped typing, and an officer near the vending machines turned his head. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "You cannot. The order says it must be delivered to Captain Cole or the supervising officer on duty after verification." Marcus pointed toward the small printed number beneath the federal seal. "You may call that number." Whitmore did not look at it. "People come in here with fake paperwork all the time. Then verification should resolve your concern." Marcus spoke evenly, but the calmness seemed to offend Whitmore more than anger would have. "Do not tell me how to do my job." Marcus paused. "I am telling you how to verify the document." From the hallway, Sergeant Thomas Hale appeared carrying a paper cup. He was a broad-shouldered man in his early 50s with silver beginning to show at his temples. His gaze moved from Marcus to the envelope. For half a second, his expression tightened. He recognized the federal marking. "What is going on?" Hale asked. Whitmore answered before Marcus could speak. He says he has confidential business with Captain Cole. Hale looked at Marcus. Do you have identification? It is on the counter. The delivery code is printed beneath the seal. Hale stepped closer, but Whitmore picked up Marcus's license and kept it in his hand. This address is on the south side, Whitmore said. That is correct. Long way to walk in this weather. I took a cab downtown. Where is the receipt? Marcus studied him quietly. The question had nothing to do with the delivery. Whitmore was not checking facts anymore. He was building suspicion from ordinary details, turning every answer into another accusation. The young man in the waiting area lowered his eyes. Hale said, Daniel, call the number. Whitmore ignored him. Empty your pockets, he told Marcus. On what basis? You entered a police station carrying an unidentified package and refusing to cooperate. Marcus looked at the sealed envelope, then at the clock. 11:13. 44 minutes remained before the next check-in. He could still leave if they returned his identification. He could still protect the operation by avoiding a confrontation. But as he glanced toward the waiting area, he saw the older woman gripping her purse with both hands, and the young man beside her sitting perfectly still, as though even breathing too loudly might be interpreted as guilt. Marcus understood then that this moment had never been only about him. He slowly placed his phone, wallet, keys, and wristwatch on the counter. Whitmore smiled as if compliance were a confession. Marcus met his eyes and said, You have everything you need to confirm who I am. What happens next is your choice. Whitmore looked down at the items on the counter as though they had confirmed something he had wanted to believe from the moment Marcus entered. The wallet was ordinary. The keys belonged to a modest sedan. The phone showed no visible alerts. The old wristwatch, with its scratched silver case and worn leather band, seemed almost too plain to matter. Whitmore picked it up anyway. This expensive? He asked. It belonged to my father, Marcus replied. That was not my question. Then ask a relevant one. The desk clerk stopped typing again. Sergeant Hale lowered his cup and stepped closer. Marcus had offered cooperation, identification, and a direct method of verification. Whitmore had been given every reasonable answer, yet each answer only seemed to push him deeper into a story of his own invention. He placed the watch beside the phone and reached for the sealed envelope. Marcus moved one hand toward it, then stopped before touching anything. That document is protected, he said. Call the issuing office. Whitmore's expression hardened. First opportunity, Marcus added quietly. For what? To end this correctly. Hale looked at the number printed beneath the red seal. Daniel, let the desk clerk make the call. The clerk reached toward the station telephone, but Whitmore placed his palm over the receiver. No one calls anyone until I know what he is carrying. The young, black man in the waiting area shifted in his seat. His mother whispered his name, reminding him to remain still. Marcus heard the fear beneath her voice, the kind of fear learned through repetition. He looked at Whitmore and understood that the officer was performing for the room now. Backing down would require admitting that his first judgment might have been wrong, and pride had already become more important to him than procedure. Second opportunity, Marcus said. Whitmore came around the desk. Turn around. Hill's face tightened. There is no reason to detain him. He brought an unidentified package into the building and refused to surrender it. It has a federal seal. It has a red mark on an envelope. Marcus turned slowly, keeping his movements deliberate. Whitmore secured his hands behind him and guided him toward the side of the counter. There was no struggle, no raised voice, only the small metallic click of the restraints closing and the sudden silence that followed. Marcus looked toward the station clock. 11:17. 40 minutes remained. His watch rested on the counter, still running. The countdown function had not yet activated because the scheduled check-in remained ahead, but its presence reminded him that every minute now had weight. Whitmore searched his coat pockets and found nothing except a folded cab receipt and a pair of reading glasses. He held up the receipt with a satisfied expression. You said you took a cab downtown. That is the receipt. It says the ride ended 4 blocks away. The driver could not get through the road construction. Convenient. Marcus turned his head slightly. You are not investigating facts. You are rearranging them until they resemble your assumption. Whitmore leaned closer. You think you are smarter than everyone in this room? No. I think everyone in this room can see what you are choosing to do. Hale took another step forward. Daniel, remove the restraints. I am ordering you to verify the seal. For the first time, Whitmore hesitated. The desk clerk watched him. The officers near the hallway watched him. Even the television seemed quieter beneath the fluorescent hum. He could still stop. He could place the envelope on the counter, remove the restraints, and make the call. Marcus held his gaze. "Third opportunity," he said. Whitmore's face changed. Shame might have saved him, but pride arrived first. He picked up the envelope and said, "I will verify it myself." Whitmore carried the envelope toward the nearest desk lamp, holding it as though authority could be proven by suspicion alone. Marcus remained beside the counter with his hands secured, watching every movement without protest. Sergeant Hale stood only a few feet away, his coffee forgotten, his expression caught between duty and regret. "Read the instructions beneath the seal," Hale said. Whitmore ignored him. He turned the envelope over, examined the courthouse return address, and pressed his thumb against the raised federal emblem. Everything about it was authentic, from the heavy paper to the registered delivery code printed along the lower edge. The truth was directly in front of him, but accepting it would mean admitting that Marcus had been right from the beginning. Whitmore slid a metal letter opener beneath the flap. "Do not open that envelope," Marcus said. His voice remained controlled, yet something in it caused the desk clerk to look up. "The order is sealed by a federal judge. Unauthorized access will be documented." "You keep using important words," Whitmore replied. "Federal. Judge. Protected. Maybe you think they make you sound convincing. They are not meant to convince you. They are meant to inform you." The flap opened with a dry tearing sound. Hale closed his eyes for a moment. Whitmore removed the first page and unfolded it beneath the lamp. At the top was the seal of the United States District Court. Below it appeared the name of a federal magistrate judge, followed by instructions authorizing the immediate preservation of station records, internal communications, evidence logs, and surveillance archives. Whitmore's expression changed so quickly that only Marcus seemed to notice. The confidence left first, then the color. His eyes moved down the page, scanning names he recognized. Captain Richard Cole, Detective Aaron Pike, Lieutenant Stephen Mercer. A case. Number from 8 years earlier. Another from 5 years earlier. Then one from the previous spring. Hale stepped closer and saw a familiar name listed beside an altered detention record. Elijah Grant. The same young man whose family had spent years asking why station footage from the night of his arrest had disappeared. Hale's hand tightened around the paper cup. "Daniel," he said quietly, "put it down." Whitmore turned to the second page. It contained a preservation order covering every computer terminal in the building and warning that destruction, concealment, or alteration of evidence could result in federal charges. The station seemed to shrink around him. The humming lights grew louder. Rain tapped against the windows. The young man in the waiting area watched Hale's face and understood that something larger than a routine delivery had entered the room. "Where did you get this?" Whitmore asked Marcus. "You already know where it came from. Who gave it to you?" "That information becomes available after verification." Whitmore looked toward the hallway leading to Captain Cole's office. For 1 second, fear exposed the truth beneath his arrogance. He was no longer wondering whether the order was real. He was wondering who had already seen it. Marcus glanced at the station clock. 11:47. 10 minutes remained before the scheduled check-in. On the counter, his father's watch continued marking each second with a quiet mechanical rhythm. Whitmore gathered the pages too quickly, bending one corner. Hale reached for them. "Give me the order." "We follow the instructions exactly." Whitmore pulled the papers away. "You do not understand what this could do." "I understand what interfering with it could do." Marcus watched Whitmore's eyes move again toward the names. Pride had brought him this far, but panic was now offering a more dangerous path. "The cameras are recording," Marcus said. "Set the documents down and make the call." Whitmore looked at the red seal, then at Marcus, then at the officers who had begun gathering near the hallway. He could still choose procedure. He could still preserve the evidence. Instead, he folded the first page between both hands. Hale stepped forward. "Daniel, do not." Marcus looked at the clock as the minute changed. 11:48. Whitmore pulled the paper apart, and the sound cut through the station like a final answer. For one suspended second, nothing moved except the two torn halves of the order in Whitmore's hands. Then the station answered. A low electronic tone sounded from every computer terminal at once. The overhead lights flickered, faded to darkness, and returned in a deep emergency red that washed the lobby in an unfamiliar glow. The front doors locked with a heavy metallic click. A second lock engaged near the rear entrance. Across the room, computer screens went black before displaying the same white message. Federal Preservation Protocol active. Do not power down equipment. Do not alter records. Do not leave the facility. The desk clerk stared at her monitor. One of the officers near the hallway reached for his radio, but a calm woman's voice came through before he could speak. All Westbridge personnel remain at your current locations. Place station radios and mobile devices where they can be seen. This facility is under the authority of the United States Marshals Service. Whitmore looked from the torn pages to Marcus. What did you do? Marcus remained still beside the counter. I told you the document was protected. You triggered this. You broke the seal. Hale set his coffee down with a trembling hand and looked toward the security camera above the lobby doors. A small green light had changed to blue, indicating that the feed was no longer being stored only on the station server. Someone outside the building was watching in real time. No one touches a computer, Hale said. His voice was louder now, stripped of hesitation. No one deletes anything. Follow the announcement exactly. Whitmore turned toward the hallway leading to Captain Cole's office. I need to warn the captain. Hale stepped into his path without touching him. The order names the captain. You are not warning anyone. Rain continued tapping against the windows, steady and indifferent, while the station's familiar sounds disappeared one by one. The printer stopped. The telephones went silent. The vending machine lights dimmed. In the waiting area, the older woman placed one hand over her son's, and for the first time that evening, neither of them looked afraid to breathe. Marcus glanced toward his father's watch on the counter. 11:49. 8 minutes remained before his scheduled check-in, but the broken seal had activated a separate safeguard built into the delivery envelope. A thin sensor embedded beneath the paper had transmitted the time, location, and opening event the instant Whitmore tore through it. The lockdown had not arrived because Marcus was powerful. It had arrived because the evidence was vulnerable. Remove these restraints, Marcus said. Whitmore gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You are still in my station. The woman's voice returned over the radios. Officer Daniel Whitmore, step away from Marcus Reed. Sergeant Thomas Hale, you are directed to secure the torn documents without further handling and release Mr. Reed immediately. Every face in the lobby turned toward Whitmore. His name had come through the system clearly. So had Marcus's. Hale approached with a key. Whitmore moved between him and Marcus. We do not know who is speaking. Hale looked at the federal message glowing on every screen. You know exactly who is speaking. This could be a breach. It is a preservation order. Hale's eyes dropped to the torn page on the floor. And you just gave them a reason to believe the evidence inside this building is in immediate danger. Whitmore's confidence began to fracture, not loudly, but in small, visible ways. His breathing shortened. His gaze moved toward each exit. His fingers tightened around the remaining pages. Marcus watched him with the same calm expression he had worn from the beginning. Set them down, Marcus said. You have already made the worst choice available. Do not make another. Outside, white headlights appeared through the rain and spread across the station windows. One vehicle stopped at the front curb. Then another. Then 4 more. Dark figures stepped onto the sidewalk beneath jackets marked with gold federal lettering. Inside the lobby, the young man beside his mother whispered, They came for the station. Hale unlocked Marcus's restraints and placed them on the counter. Marcus rubbed his wrists once, then reached for his father's watch. It read 11:51. Whitmore stared through the glass as the United States Marshals formed a quiet line beyond the locked doors. No one shouted. No one rushed. They simply took their positions, and for the first time in years, every person inside Westbridge understood that the building no longer belonged to the men who had mistaken control for justice. The front doors unlocked at 11:52, not because anyone inside Westbridge released them, but because authority had arrived with its own access code. Deputy United States Marshal Evelyn Carter entered first, rain shining across the shoulders of her dark jacket, followed by 6 marshals carrying sealed evidence cases and portable computer equipment. They moved without urgency because urgency had already been replaced by control. Carter was 46, composed, and precise, with the steady expression of someone who had learned that the quietest voice in a room often carried the most weight. She stopped beneath the red emergency lights and surveyed the lobby. Marcus stood beside the counter with his coat open and his father's watch back on his wrist. Hale remained near the torn order. Whitmore stood several feet away, still holding the second page as though refusing to release it could somehow restore what he had lost. Carter's eyes settled on the paper. "Place the document on the counter, Officer Whitmore." He did not move. "This is a local police facility," he said. "You cannot simply take control without explaining the basis." Carter removed a credential case and held it where everyone could see. "The basis was delivered to this building under the seal of a United States District Court. You opened it without authorization, ignored its instructions, and destroyed part of it while the station cameras were recording." Whitmore looked toward the camera above the entrance. Its blue light remained steady. Carter continued, "The original order exists in the court system. Tearing a copy did not erase it." One of the marshals stepped forward with a clear evidence sleeve. Whitmore finally placed the page on the counter. The marshal collected it without comment, followed by the two torn halves on the floor. Carter turned to Marcus. "Mr. Reed, are you injured?" "No." "Were you prevented from completing the delivery?" "Yes." "Were your identification and personal belongings taken?" Marcus pointed toward the counter. Carter nodded to another marshal, who photographed each item before returning them to him. There was no dramatic announcement of Marcus's status. No title designed to humiliate Whitmore in return. Carter simply said, "Mr. Reed is a protected federal witness and the authorized courier for this order." The words moved through the lobby like a change in air pressure. The desk clerk covered her mouth. The young man in the waiting area leaned forward. Hale stared at Marcus, finally understanding why the delivery had required a timed check-in and a protected seal. Whitmore looked confused. A courier caused this entire response. Carter faced him. "No. The evidence inside this station caused the response. Mr. Reed was the person trusted to preserve it." She turned toward the marshals. "Begin isolation. Secure the server room, evidence storage, records division, and Captain Cole's office. No employee accesses a terminal without federal supervision." The team separated with quiet efficiency. Small tamper seals appeared across doors and cabinets. Portable devices were connected to station computers to preserve data before anyone could alter it. Every action was measured, documented, and witnessed. Whitmore watched the familiar building transform around him into a federal scene. "You do not understand what you are walking into," he said. Carter looked back at him. "We understand exactly what we are walking into. 8 years of altered arrest reports. Missing camera files. Evidence logs changed after midnight. Civil complaints closed without interviews. 3 officers transferred whenever questions reached internal review." Hale's face drained of color. "Elijah Grant," he said quietly. Carter met his eyes. "His file is one of 27. The older woman in the waiting area lowered her head. Her son placed an arm around her shoulders. Marcus watched them, then looked at Hale. "That is why I came." Carter opened a folder carried by one of the marshals and removed a photograph of a damaged archive box. Mr. Reed worked in municipal records. He discovered that reports stored under different case numbers contained identical timestamps and matching deletion patterns. He preserved lawful copies before the originals disappeared. Whitmore stared at Marcus with disbelief, as though the man he had judged on sight had become someone entirely different. But Marcus had not changed. Only the truth available to the room had changed. Carter stepped closer to Whitmore. "You saw a man carrying a sealed order and decided his presence was suspicious. We saw a witness risking his safety to deliver evidence for people no one listened to." Then she turned toward the hallway as the elevator doors opened. Captain Richard Cole emerged, fastening his uniform jacket, irritation already forming on his face. He saw the marshals, the red lights, and Marcus standing free beside the counter. His irritation vanished. Carter raised the court order's surviving page. "Captain Cole, remain where you are. The station is now a federal evidence site." Captain Cole stopped beneath the red lights and slowly lowered his hands from the front of his jacket. For years, the station had responded to his presence before he spoke. Doors opened. Conversations ended. Reports changed direction. But now no one moved for him. Deputy United States Marshal Evelyn Carter stood between Cole and the hallway, holding the surviving page of the court order in a clear evidence sleeve. "Captain Richard Cole," she said, "you are directed to surrender your station access card, department telephone, and office keys." Cole looked past her toward Sergeant Hale. Thomas, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Hill did not answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the name Elijah Grant printed across a recovered page. The silence between the two men revealed more than any accusation could have. Cole changed his approach. This station has active cases, detainees, and public safety obligations. A complete shutdown creates unnecessary risk. Carter's expression remained unchanged. Public safety is the reason the station is being secured. Behind her, federal technicians began preserving the record server. Each file was copied with a verified timestamp. Each cabinet was photographed before it was opened. Nothing depended on memory or rank now. Every action left a record. Cole looked toward Marcus. You caused this. Marcus stood beside the front counter, his father's watch resting against his wrist. I preserved what your department tried to erase. Cole gave a faint, dismissive smile, but it did not reach his eyes. You worked in records. You processed forms. You did not understand the cases behind them. I understood that arrest times were changed after complaints were filed. I understood that camera logs were removed on nights when force reports did not match witness statements. I understood that the same administrator credentials appeared across 27 altered files. The waiting room fell completely silent. Marcus continued without anger. And I understood that every missing record belonged to a person whose family was told there was nothing left to review. Carter nodded to a marshal standing near Cole. Collect his access items. Cole placed the keys and department telephone on the counter, but held on to the access card. You are treating routine corrections like a criminal conspiracy. Hale finally looked up. Routine corrections do not require deleting camera backups. Cole turned toward him. Be careful. The warning was quiet, familiar, and practiced. Hale had heard that tone before, usually behind closed doors. This time, everyone heard it. He set his badge on the counter beside Cole's keys. I was careful for 8 years, Hale said. Careful enough to stay silent. Careful enough to tell myself I did not know the whole story. That was not caution. It was cowardice. Whitmore stared at him. You are going to believe him over your own people? Hale looked toward Marcus. He gave us 3 chances to follow procedure. We refused because Daniel decided what kind of man he was before checking a single fact. Carter directed one of the marshals to separate Cole and Whitmore from the rest of the staff for formal interviews. Their department weapons, credentials, and access cards were secured without spectacle. No one shouted. No one celebrated. The power shift happened through documentation, witness statements, and the removal of privileges that had once seemed permanent. As Cole was led toward a conference room, the older woman in the waiting area stood. My son has been here since 7, she said. No one will tell me why. Carter immediately assigned a marshal to review the detention record. Within minutes, the answer appeared on a screen. No signed booking authorization. No active warrant. No documented probable cause. The young man was released to his mother, and the desk clerk quietly began to cry. Marcus watched them walk toward the door together. That moment mattered more to him than seeing Cole lose control of the station. Carter came to stand beside him. The archive copies you preserved matched the server images, she said. The case is stronger than we expected. Marcus looked through the glass at the rain easing over Westbridge. Then make it larger than me. Carter studied him. What do you mean? Do not let this become a story about one officer choosing the wrong man. Make it about every person who was never believed because no federal convoy came for them. Across the lobby, Hale heard the words and lowered his eyes. The station had finally been locked down, but Marcus knew the harder work would begin when the doors opened again. By sunrise, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets of Westbridge washed clean beneath a pale gray sky. Inside the station, the red emergency lights had returned to white, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. Federal technicians continued copying records while marshals sealed cabinets, labeled evidence boxes, and documented every recovered file. Captain Richard Cole remained in a conference room with federal investigators. Daniel Whitmore sat in another office without his badge, his access card, or the certainty that had carried him through the night. The building was quieter than Marcus had ever known it, not because fear had disappeared, but because truth had finally become louder than rank. Deputy United States Marshal Evelyn Carter approached him near the front doors. The court has authorized a broader review, she said. Every complaint connected to the altered files will be reopened. Families will be contacted. Independent investigators will handle the interviews. Marcus looked toward the waiting area, now empty except for 2 paper cups and a folded blanket left on a chair. Hours earlier, a mother had sat there wondering whether her son would come home. Now they were together. It was one small correction in a system filled with larger wounds, but Marcus allowed himself to hold on to it. "What happens to Hale?" he asked. Carter glanced toward the records desk, where Sergeant Thomas Hale was preparing a written statement. "That depends on what he tells us and what the evidence confirms. Cooperation does not erase silence, but silence does not have to be permanent." Hale looked up as Marcus approached. His badge still rested on the counter where he had placed it. "Mr. Reed," he said, "I owe you an apology." Marcus waited. Hale swallowed. "Not only for tonight. I recognized the seal, and I still hesitated. I saw what Whitmore was doing, and I measured the risk to myself before considering the risk to you." "Why?" Marcus asked. Hale looked toward the hallway where Cole had disappeared. "Because this place taught us that loyalty meant protecting the station from consequences." Marcus shook his head. "Loyalty without truth is only protection for the people already in power." Hale nodded slowly. "I know that now. Knowing it now matters only if you tell them everything." Hale picked up his statement. "I will." Near the conference room, Whitmore appeared between 2 marshals. He looked smaller without the uniform items that had once announced his authority before he spoke. His eyes found Marcus. For a moment, neither man said anything. Then Whitmore looked toward the evidence sleeve containing the torn pages. "I did not know who you were," he said. Marcus's expression remained calm. That was never the problem. Whitmore frowned as though he had expected anger, perhaps even satisfaction. Marcus continued. "You believed you needed to know who I was before treating me fairly. You saw a black man, decided the document was false, and built every question around that decision. My identity should not have been the price of my dignity." The words left Whitmore with nowhere to hide. No misunderstanding could explain the choices he had made. No missing information could excuse refusing verification 3 separate times. Carter stepped beside Marcus as the marshals escorted Whitmore toward the rear office. "Your scheduled check-in was 6 minutes ago," she said. Marcus looked at his father's watch. 11 minutes past midnight had become nearly 6 in the morning without him noticing. "I suppose I missed it." The system noticed. A faint smile crossed his face. He reached into his coat and removed the metal fastener that had once held the sealed envelope closed. It was bent, but unbroken. Marcus placed it on the counter beside Hale's badge. Outside, morning light spread across the wet pavement, touching the station windows one by one. "My father used to say paper can be hidden, names can be changed, and records can be buried," Marcus said. "But truth leaves a pattern." Carter opened the front door. Cool air entered the lobby. Marcus stepped onto the sidewalk and looked back only once. The station still stood, but the silence protecting it had been broken. Whitmore had believed power lived in a uniform, a locked door, and a piece of paper he could destroy. By sunrise, he had learned that real power lived in the truth people failed to erase.